Today's class is dedicated in loving memory of Millie Marcus, Alea Shalom Lilu Nishmat Malka Bat Gerez, sponsored by the Marcus family. We're happy to have some faces back. We have some new faces. Have you been here before? Okay, welcome aboard. Have you been here before? Well, I can see that. Okay. Welcome aboard, or maybe you got the vaccine by lying. I don't know. All right. Anyone else? Everyone else been here before? Okay, excellent. So what we like to do just for our newbies is to look through a Mishnah quickly, or a Mishnah quickly, and then go back and try and mine for the beautiful, wonderful things that are hidden underneath the surface. Let's look at the Mishnah. Rabbi Nehorai Omer. Interesting name. Rabbi Nehorai. I think if anyone in the Jewish people today who doesn't learn Mishnayot or whatever knows the name, it's all thanks to a certain superstar called Yaakov Shweki who made a song called Rabbi Nehorai Omer. Okay, fine. Rabbi Nehorai Omer, Havi oheve golel mkom Torah. A person should exile themselves to a place of Torah. Ve'al tomar shehi tavo acharecha. Don't say that Torah will follow me. Okay? Shechaverecha yekaimuha biyadecha, that your friends will help you retain it, will help you hold on to it. Ve'el binatecha al tishaen, and on your own understanding, on your own bina, don't rely, don't lean on your own understanding. So what kind of message do you feel like the Mishnah is teaching you? Just straight off the bat, what is it saying to you? What do you think?
Rely on Hashem.
Okay, rely on Hashem, rely on wisdom, perhaps that's greater than your own. What else are we getting over here? What else are we?
Rely on yourself.
So the first thing is we're hearing, what do you mean by rely on yourself?
Remember your morals, your values, your religion. You remember it. Someone else is not responsible for you.
Okay, so it seems like we have contradictory messages here. The first thing is, don't say that Torah is going to follow you. In other words, El binatcha al tishayin, don't think that you're going to be enough to hold on to your own level, to hold on to your Torah, to your growth, right? And in other words, it's saying that you can't rely on yourself. Then, in one of the sentences, it says, don't say that your friends will retain it for you. So there's a little bit of a confusing message here. Is it up to you to hold on to it? Are you enough to be able to keep yourself where you need to be? Do you rely on your friends to be able to do that? Is it an environmental thing, So in order to understand the words of Rabbi Nehorai, we actually need to understand who Rabbi Nehorai is. So, if you open up a Gemara to the Masechet called Eruvin, on page 13b, you will find that Rabbi Nehorai was actually a fellow otherwise known as, he was the artist formerly known as Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. Some of you might remember that name. We've mentioned him in a Mishnah, the students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And I don't know if you remember, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was describing the students that he had. And he said about Rabbi Elazar ben Arach that if he was on one side of the scale and all of the other rabbis of Israel were on the other side of the scale, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach would be machriya benehem. He would outweigh all the other scholars of the Jewish people. This man is a Torah beast, okay? He's a monster, he's amazing. And yet, our rabbis tell us that Rabbi Elazar ben Arach decided to move from a Torah center, from a place that had much Torah going on in it, and he moved to a vacation village. Yani, he was the first guy to move to Florida. His wife said, come on, these New York winters, I want to be in Miami Beach. They moved to a place where there was no Torah. Why did they move there? Because Rabbi Elazar thought that his friends would follow him to this new place. And they would set up a town, they would set up a place of Torah. And yet, what happened? He started to notice that his friends weren't following. So he told his wife, I don't think we can stay here. We have to leave. And his wife said to him, does the bread follow the mice, or do the mice follow the bread? He said, the mice follow the bread. She said, so what are you worried about? If you're the greatest scholar amongst the group, they're obviously going to come to you. Why would you need to move back to them? Don't worry. You just need to stick it out a little bit longer. He stayed in this vacation place, in a place which did not have Torah. And what happened to Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, famously? I can see you know already. You do know, don't you? He forgot all of his Torah. Everything. How much Torah did he forget? Do you remember, Ronnie?
I don't remember how much, but I remember that what we learned from that whole...
From the saga. Yes. But it's astonishing, actually, how much Torah he forgot. The Gemara tells us that he went up to a Sefer Torah, and they opened up the book and they asked him to read the Sefer when it came to his Aliyah. And he read, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, which actually, ironically, is this week's parasha, B'dum Ching. Hashem always makes it work out, that all the things in your life line up, things line up. There's a symmetry in what we learn and what we're going through in the parasha of the week, etc., etc. Okay, one more time. I don't know, by the way, if you guys were aware, last week we gave a whole class, and what was amazing was the entire class that I gave wound up being on the yard site of the rabbi that we kept mentioning. And I was completely unaware. But it's not the first time it's happened. So there is order, yesh din v'yesh dayan, there is an order and a symmetry to the universe, even when you're not aware of it, okay? Now listen to this. He goes up to the Sefer Torah and he reads, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. This is the month for you, Rosh Chodashim, which is the head of all months. It's the first mitzvah in the Torah. If you're going to forget something, you're not going to forget that one, right? You might forget some mitzvah in the middle of Parshat, Kedoshim. He gets up to read and he reads, HaCheresh Haya Libam. HaCheresh, he misreads the Dalid for a Resh. He misreads Hazeh, the Zayin for a Yud, right? And he misreads Lachem to Libam. He misreads the Chaf for a Bet. He can't read. Now, I need you to understand. He didn't grow up going to, York Prep, and then went to college in NYU, and then couldn't read his Bar Mitzvah parasha. He was the greatest scholar in all of Israel. And where was he living? In flipping Israel. How did he forget how to read Hebrew? Even if he forgot Torah, how did he forget how to read Hebrew? When he walked to the store, he saw a falafel stand. That's in Hebrew. How did this happen? What we're talking about over here is not some sort of gradual forgetting, but some sort of afflicted forgetting, a forgetting that happened to him rather than around him, if you will. He couldn't read. He was broken. He went to his friends, the great Chachamim, and he told them that he made a mistake and he was prepared to move back to a place of Torah. And they prayed together, all the scholars of Israel prayed together, and his memory was restored. And they gave him the name Rabbi Nehorai because the word Nehora in Aramaic means something that illuminates. You may have heard me quote the Gemara that says, Shraga betihara mai ahanya. Tihara, Nehora means the daylight. So he was called Rabbi Nehorai because he illuminated the eyes of the sages with his teachings. Could you imagine that this is who we're talking about? So the greatest of the scholars always have something like that in their name. In fact, who was another one of the great scholars that outweighed all of his contemporaries? Someone called Rabbi Meir. The word Meir also means to bring light. So he was called Rabbi Nehorai. Why? Because he illuminated the eyes of everyone with his Torah. So how does a guy that starts here go to such a depth, and then after the depth is kind of expunged, he then returns to have the name Rabbi Nehorai again? How does this happen? Question number one. Question number two, if ever there was a sentence that should be struck from the record, is shechaverecha yikaimuha biyadecha. Let's go back now and understand what Rabbi Nehorai is teaching us based on, as we always say, the context of his lived experiences. Just so we sound woke. Heve golel limkom Torah. Make sure that you exile yourself only to a place of Torah. Va'al tomar shehi tavo acharecha. Don't say it's going to follow you. Where's he sharing this from? His own difficult circumstance. It's not going to follow you. Shechaverecha yikaimu biyadecha. Kama shechaverecha, that your friends will keep it in your hands. Don't say that it will follow you, that your friends will keep you, because they'll come with you to this place. They may not come with you. Ve'el binatecha al tishayin, and do not rely on your own bina, on your own wisdom. So I want to point out a couple things about this Mishnah. Because number one, the words that the Mishnah uses are incredibly exact. And as great a scholar as Rabbi Elazar ben Arach was, and Rabbi Nehorai was, if he was someone that was capable of nitpicking, of learning incredible lessons from the tiniest nuance in language in a pasuk, it behooves him also to be incredibly careful with the words he uses to teach. So question number one, assuming this is an iteration of his life, then there's a word here that seems to be out of place. Actually, a couple. This is a hard one to find. Let's see if you guys can find a couple words that seem to be out of place in this Mishnah if Rabbi Nehorai is communicating to us. Thank you so much. His understanding from his own life.
Exile, maybe?
Boom! First shot, Leah. Nailed it. Right out of the park. Exiled. What exiled? Golel makom Torah. He came from a makom Torah to a place that wasn't. It's the exact opposite of his life, actually. Question number one. Excellent. Question number two. This requires a little bit of knowledge on the various terminologies that we use for a word. So it might be a bit more of a stretch, but I have faith in my homies. What do we got? Think about what Rabbi Elazar ben Arach forgot.
Retain
What did he lose?
his memory
To what level?
that he didn't know how to read.
He couldn't read. What word would you use to describe a person's ability to know the most basic forms of Torah? Bina. Binatecha. It sounds like he's saying don't rely on your bina. Now, those of us who have studied the Jewish understanding of wisdom will know that there is a ladder for wisdom. We discussed this last week, I believe, with Nevo that we was at in this class. With Parshat, with Nevo El Matecha. No? I didn't. Oh, I guess. Maybe that was Seudah Shalishit. It's hard to remember which class you say what in. Okay? One of the magnificent things that we learn about Moshe Rabbeinu is that there are 50 levels of understanding in the Torah. It's called Nun Sha'areh Bina, or 50 levels of understanding. Moshe Rabbeinu did not have the 50th level. We did learn. So I thought so.
And he got the letter and that.
Right? Okay, I thought so. So you're all looking at me like I'm crazy. Meanwhile, all y'all tripping. None of you remembered, okay? He gets buried, as we said, in Har Nevo. Nevo stands for the word Nunbo, that at that level of his experience, he had all 50 levels in him. Nevo is Nunbo. But before that point, when he was appointed to be the leader of the Jewish people, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, Kach et Hamateh. Hamateh is Memtet. What did Hashem tell him to take? He told him to take the 49 levels of Chokhmah. Okay? The mateh of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the 49 levels of bina, of understanding that Moshe was given in order to lead. Okay? But the 50th level was outside of his ability to attain until the moment of his death. Okay? So we understand that bina is a process. However, there are different forms of wisdom. There's chokhmah, there's bina, and there's da'at. I don't want to go into each one of them because an exposition of each one of them would take too much of the class time, and we don't have enough time to go into this sidebar. But you see in the prayer that we say every day for wisdom, we don't only ask for one or for the other, but we say, V'chonenu me'itecha, chokhmah, bina, v'da'at. We ask God to grant us wisdom. Da'at is understanding or knowledge, and bina is this other form. Our rabbis explain that chokhmah and bina refer to types of wisdom that you have. Higher forms of understanding, lower forms of understanding. But binatecha is a process of wisdom which is attained by extrapolation. In fact, the word bina itself means lehavin davar mitoch davar, to understand something from something else. So perhaps a better way of understanding bina is a wisdom which is a wisdom of application. Okay? Understanding something that you have not been told, or have not been shown, or have not been taught from something that you have been. Okay? So this bina, it sounds like Rabbi Nehora is a bit overshooting here. Like, exile yourself to a place of Torah. Don't say it's coming after you. Don't say that your friends are going to ensure that you'll keep your level of Torah. Ve'el binatecha al tesha'en, and don't rely on your own bina. He lost everything. So one simple way of understanding it is not that we're talking about bina. It's kind of like, I'll give you an example. Imagine a person fails their SATs, so much so they don't even know how to write their own name. They get 0 points on their SAT. The SAT scores give you points for writing your name. I don't know if you know that. You know that? Welcome to America. The land of not hurting people's feelings. My God, you know your own name? Right? The classic line used to be, he knows my name. Like now it's, he knows his name. Give him points. It's crazy. Right? Imagine someone forgets their own name. They know nothing. They're so blackout drunk. The morning after their party, they come to the SAT, they get a 0. Could you imagine the teacher the next week saying, look, I think it's really important that this time around, you practice your, I don't even know what the example would be of the highest form of, math that you'd need in order to pass an SAT exam today. But, probably your best advice would be, don't get drunk. Have a good night's sleep. Come aware, corpus mentis. That's what you'd say to someone like that. Rabbi Elazar ben Arach loses everything. Why is he talking about bina? So I want to share something which I think is very powerful. I think the Mishnah is teaching us a few different segments, if you will, that are required in the process of understanding Torah. The first thing Rabbi Elazar ben Arach is teaching us is whether you come from a place of Torah or you are going to a place of Torah, it's actually not really the point. In either case, you're going to be going into exile. A person who has an accurate understanding of Torah is only a person who is in exile. You don't need to leave your physical location to be exiled. And let me explain what this means. Our rabbis tell us on the pasuk, Zot HaTorah Adam ki yamut ba'ohel. This is the Torah, a person who dies in the tent. Our rabbis explain, En divrei Torah mitkayimin. Who kept saying the word kayem earlier when I was asking for the word? I saw someone was mouthing the word yekayimua earlier on. En divrei Torah mitkayimin, same word. The words of Torah, they do not stay. They do not last. Right? Only in a person, shememit atzmo, that a person who kills himself, ela b'mi shememit atzmo alehem. He kills himself over them. Oh. Sometimes I'm just so disappointed in this world. I remember, you share my feelings, Susan. I see the shaking of the head and that deep body sigh. Like, I remember when I was a kid, there was a racing game that I had. And when you'd start, so you could choose the world that you wanted to race in. You just like went on to the left, right? And it would just like, do you want this world or that world or this world or that world or this city or that racetrack? You could just, sometimes I think like, the world that we're in, oh my gosh. Oh. Our world teaches you that not only is struggle not something that you should look for, but we are taught that comfort, not only is it a nice thing, it's the right thing. Like, I just feel it shouldn't be this hard. Right? Love shouldn't be this hard. Relationships shouldn't be this hard. Marriages shouldn't be this hard. Nothing should be this hard. Right? It should just be easy. It should just flow. Do you ever hear that? Yeah. That's the advice that people are giving. What kind of work should you do? You should do work that you enjoy. Okay. I agree you should enjoy it. That does not mean that it shouldn't be hard. Somewhere along the line we got confused and we think that enjoyment means relaxing. Those are not synonyms. If you looked up the synonym to enjoy, it wouldn't be to do nothing. Enjoyment means that you derive enjoyment for something. Who said that that's not hard? So if you think the words of Torah, memit atzmo alehem, you have to kill yourself for them. No, Torah should I should come alive when I learn Torah. I should feel alive when I do mitzvot. Yes, you should. But it should also kill. When you're in the gym, if what you are doing is not hard, you are not growing. That's just the reality. You're supposed to max out on the weights. You're supposed to not be able to finish the set. If you're not finishing the set, just don't waste your time. Is this clear? Now you can max out on weight, you can max out on reps, but if you're not pushing yourself harder than the last time you were here, you're not growing muscle. It's just the reality of it. So the Mishnah, when it's telling us this concept, is echoing the words of the Gemara. En divrei Torah mitkayimin. Torah doesn't stay in a person. It doesn't reside in you unless you're killing yourself for it. What does that mean, to kill yourself for it? It means to push yourself when you're going for a run. And you know what's crazy about it? I don't know if we have runners here, but when you're running and you get to that place where it's rough and you push through, you know what you actually get from that? I'm not even talking, by the way, spiritually. It's called a runner's high. You actually get a release of endorphins in your brain. You feel good about killing yourself. That's the sweet spot. Okay? What the Torah is telling you is, if you're not pushing yourself and you're learning, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, then your Torah is going to become stale. And if it's stale, it won't stick around. You know why? Because our brains, our body, we only choose things that feel, that taste fresh. Anything that gets stale, we shove out of our lives. Sometimes even really important, beautiful things, we shove out of our lives because they have become stale. And rather than seeking ways to make them fresh again, we just fall out. I had a rabbi tell me in the beginning of the pandemic, he said to me, I don't really know, I'm not I'm not really feeling the Zoom. I'm more of a people's person. So if I can't teach, people, maybe I better go do something else. I could just feel the therapist in me bubbling up. Just to be clear, I don't have a therapist in me, but the therapist voice in me. So I said, I hear you. I said, I hear you. Or you didn't get into the rabbinate to be a people person. You didn't get into the rabbinate because you liked hanging out. That, there are other things that you could do that are much easier, that just allow you to interact with people. What is the driving force behind your decision to become a Rav, or become a rabbi? It was to communicate Torah. It was to elevate people. It was to inspire people. So now you're in a situation where people are trapped behind a screen, and you are too. Does that mean that you lose your calling? He says, I can't just talk at a screen. I need the feedback. I said, okay, so let's work with what you need and tap into what you actually are trying to do. I said, instead of teaching to a screen, let's teach to Zoom, and let me show you. Don't teach on your phone. Teach in front of a laptop, because you can reorder, instead of it being just your own face, you can have an ocean of faces. 50 people can be sitting in front of you. You just have to tell everyone in your Zoom class that it is not optional to have your screen off. Condition of coming to your class, condition of carriage. Are you with me? Are you with me? Torah is not supposed to be easy. So the Gemara tells us Torah will stay with you if you're willing to push yourself for it. Rabbi Nehorai says, why did I move to this place in the first place? Never mind what happened to me after I moved to West Palm Beach. Right? After there was no shul, and no synagogue, and no kollel, and no yeshiva, and no chavruta, and no bet midrash, and no classes. Never mind what happened to me after. Why did I move there in the first place? Because it was vacation village. The first thing you have to understand is, if you're looking for the easy life and the Torah life, never the twain shall meet. This is not easy, what we're doing here. And if you want that your Torah and your Judaism should fit into your lifestyle, sorry. It's just not going to work like that. It's not going to be convenient. The first thing is, you have to understand, heavy golel makom Torah. You have to exile yourself. You have to make yourself not comfortable. So let's talk about this for a minute. Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. What does that mean to you?
That you used to make an effort to get the result that you want.
Sorry?
That you get used to make an effort to get the result that you want.
That you're used to making an effort.
Right.
Okay, good. What else?
You have to accept that you may not always feel comfortable in your endeavor and in your pursuit of learning and doing what you need to do. It's not always going to be a party.
You have to accept that it's not always going to be a party. Okay, good. What else? You guys are on step 1. I want to get to step 50. And then I'll let your imaginations fill in the blanks in between.
Well, you have to, sometimes you have to go through a difficult time and push through that to feel the comfort after, because you went through the difficult time. Like, you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortableness to find, sometimes an equal balance.
So getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're saying happens when a person has an experience in which they are uncomfortable, and then they got through, and then they know that they'll be okay.
Part of it.
Okay, so that's one step forward. I want you guys to jump a bunch of steps, and let me explain the difference between where you're talking, because what you're saying is great, but where it's different to what I'm talking about. There are two words in Hebrew, in the way we think of mitzvot, about obligations, that are parallel opposites to one another. One word is lichatechila, and one word is b'di'evid. Do you know what those two words mean?
In the beginning.
In the beginning, okay.
B'di'evid is after the fact.
B'di'evid means after the fact. So literally b'di'evid means when it's done. So let me give you an example. What happens if one drop of milk falls into a big pot of kibbeh hamda? 1/60th it's kosher. Yeah? Everyone on board? Yeah? One drop of milk falls into a pot of cholent. If there's 1/60th, right? Cholent is hamin for everyone who's Sephardic, okay? Right?
Ashkenaz and Sephardic?
Is what?
That long? 1/60th?
Everybody. Yeah? Are we clear? One drop of milk, one pot of cholent, you're good to go. B'di'avad. How about if someone says, I have the secret to a delicious cholent?
It's not.
All it needs is one drop of milk. Oh my God, the milk undertones, right? No. Not allowed to do that, right? Right? Not allowed to do that. Why? That's called in halacha, bitul isur lechatechila. Undoing or nullifying something that's asur lechatechila from the beginning. So there's a fundamental difference between before, am I allowed to do this, and b'di'evid, after it's already done. So this is asur, and this is now that it's done, you did it by mistake. Okay? What's the halacha now? So many people live in b'di'evid world. Rabbi, enough with the spirit of Shabbat. Tell me what's the halacha. And sometimes I cringe because they don't realize that the whole point of Shabbat was the spirit of Shabbat. It's not this like side amendment to the Constitution. Literally the whole point of God forbidding everything on Shabbat. The whole point. Ramban writes explicitly. The whole point of all the don'ts was in order to have the do. Zachor v'shamor. Shamor means guard the Shabbat from not doing any melacha. Don't bake bread. Don't cook food. Don't carry out in the street. Don't paint. Don't write. Don't erase. Don't build. All the things that you can't do. You know why? Because if you do the things that you don't do, you know what will happen? You will push out the thing that you're supposed to do, which is what? To remember it's Shabbat. And here's a guy telling me, Rabbi, leave me alone with the spirit of Shabbat. Just tell me, am I allowed to do this or not allowed to do this? The whole point of the not allowed is for the spirit of Shabbat. But people live in a b'di'evid world. I'm a b'di'evid girl in a b'di'evid world. Oh, if Hashem could hear me now. Striking me down with lightning. Okay. Are we clear? You're talking b'di'evid. I'm asking lechatechila. There's a difference between accepting it's going to be hard. Accepting that I have to accept, a lot of accepts, right? That it's not going to be easy. Knowing that I can make it through the other side. That's different than seeking the challenge. It's so the opposite. It's not like, all right, like if it's painful, it's gotta be painful. It's gotta hurt. It's gotta be rough. It's gotta be challenging. It's gotta push your mental, your spiritual, your personal boundaries. And if it's not, then you're not doing your part. Your part is where your boundary ends. That's what Rabbi Meir is telling us. Heavy goleh lemakom Torah. Do you see what I mean by that? Now, after you go through a difficult experience, you know that you'll be okay if you have to go through another. You're not looking for difficult, are you? In every other area, I'd agree with you. Not here. Not here. V'al tomar shehi tavo acharecha. If you go to a place, if you exile yourself, you push yourself to be a person of chesed. Someone was saying the other day, Rabbi, your wife is a tzaddiket. She always opens her house, has all these different people coming into the house. I could never deal with that. People coming into my house. What does it sound like she needs to do? What does it sound like her challenge, her specific mission is? Invite people in the house. So that person that says, Rabbi, I'll cook 1,000 meals, but I can't have anyone come. I can't have anyone. I'm not talking about Corona, hold on. Just to be clear, right? I'll cook 1,000 meals, but just, they can't come in and sit on my couch. Right? If that uncomfortable, cook less meals. Invite one person over. Why? And this is such a uprooting of the understanding that people have of what Judaism is. Hashem doesn't need your 1,000 meals. He doesn't need them. We say every day, Poteach et yadecha umazbiya lechol chai ratzon. Hashem could feed them. He has enough food. He has enough messengers. He can get the food to them. God also has an Uber Eats account. He can send food to anybody, okay? He doesn't need your food. What does God need from you? What does God need from me, from all of us?
To stretch, to do what you're uncomfortable.
Why? Why does he need us to stretch? Is he a masochist? He just likes to see us squirm and be in pain? That sounds like lived experience too.
It's just, you see people struggling and suffering. I mean, it's very hard for people to understand why. So if I can tell them what you're saying, they can look and think I was crazy. So I'm trying to get enough information here to pass it on.
Let's be clear. We are not talking about people's personal pain. I'm not talking about someone who had someone die. We're like, oh, that's what Hashem wants. Like striking people down. I'm talking about in a person's work, in a person's actions, the difficulties that they have in their actions in achieving goodness in this world. When things are uncomfortable, that are difficult. I'm not talking about personal pain that a person happens to have. I'm talking about seeking out. Why does God want to see me uncomfortable? And I need this to be clear, because otherwise we've really lost the whole point here.
Because that's how you grow. That's how you grow.
And
By overcoming challenges.
By
overcoming challenges.
And
Fulfill your potential.
okay, so these are great words. Fulfill your potential. But I want to be clear again. We keep doing this. Lechatchila, we're having two different conversations. Your conversation is about b'di'evid, like, so there's me, and then there's the potential that I'm fulfilling. I want to explain. There is no you other than growth. That is what you are. You know when we talk about someone who passes away young, and one of the reasons that people die when they are young is because they have fulfilled their mission. You've heard this before, right? Let's wrap our heads around that one more time. Wait a second. You're telling me that he died because he did all the mitzvot he came to this world to do? That sounds stupid. Surely if he fulfilled his mission, he should get more points in the game called life, and he should live longer. No. Life is not this thing that you just happen to have, and when you can, sprinkle some growth in here and there so you don't feel really bad about you. Life is growth. That's all it is. When you grew as much as you could, there's no point in you being here anymore. Zero. So Hashem takes you back. Did you understand the power of that message and how far it actually helps us reroute and recalibrate the way we look at this Mishnah, and in fact all of Judaism. Life is only growth. Life is only about me pushing my personal boundaries. So when God gave me the Torah and told me to take care of a poor person, He doesn't need you to give tzedakah. He doesn't need you to give the poor person money. He needs you to fight yourself to give. When Avraham feeds the angels, they don't eat anything. But Avram is rewarded for this mitzvah incredibly. His children get manna from the heavens because Avram fed the angels. His children have a well traveling with them in the desert because he gets them water. Rachatzu raglechem. Why would you give him reward? There's no mitzvah. They didn't even eat it. The mitzvah is not them eating it. The mitzvah is you giving it. Again, are we seeing how far the traditional understanding of Torah and mitzvahs are from the reality of what the Jewish and the Judaism system is actually asking of us? There is only one thing in this world, and it is you and your job of self-rectification and fulfillment of your potential. That is your world. Yes?
How do we know when we achieve our goals? How do we feel that? To understand what you're saying.
The sweat that you feel is your body saying, I'm alive. There's someone that once said, I can't remember, one of the Hasidic Rebbes, he said something that I thought was very insightful. He said that when a person is crying, it's like their neshama is sweating. Took me a long time to wrap my head around that. When a person is suffering, they're in pain, they're trying to deal with a situation. They're trying to see clearly. That's what tears do. They clean out our eyes, they allow us to see clearly, right? If there's any dirt in your eyes. When a person is crying, it's like their soul, your body works hard, it sweats. When your soul works hard, you're crying. I thought that was such a remarkable insight. Rabbi Nehorai Omer Havi Golel Makom Torah. So exile yourself. Wherever you are, how do you get yourself out of that comfort zone? How do you learn more than you're comfortable or capable of? How do you do chesed that you're actually doesn't come easily or naturally to you? How do you forgive the person that's hard for you to forgive, not the one that's easy for you to forgive? Or, by the way, because things are not counted in whole measures, it's not like you forgive him or you don't, you forgive her or you don't. It's gradations. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit less angry. It's a little bit less bitter. All of that, each one of those is a rung on that ladder until you kind of accomplish all of it. So the first thing is heavy golel makom Torah. I have to take myself from my natural place to a place of Torah, where the world is telling you comfort rules. The world is telling you you should only ever be on vacation. That's like the ideal, to be retired at the age of 25, and just sit there on a beach chair out in the sun all day, partying all night. That's what the world tells you is heaven. And in Torah's eyes, that's hell. You're doing nothing. You're accomplishing nothing. Has anyone here ever felt, after a while of not fulfilling their potential, you haven't gone to shul or to a class in a little too long? Yeah, has that ever happened to you? Like you didn't learn something that really excited your brain or your soul in a little too long, right? You're kind of out there doing your thing. The best way I could describe it is this, like a dull ache. People felt it after Corona. They tell me, Rabbi, you don't understand. Like, I'm dying here. I miss the shul. Like, I miss it. I miss the classes. I miss interacting with people. It's like a dull ache. The neshama, sometimes, it speaks to us. It tells us, by giving us these feelings, it helps us understand where we are. What's the ultimate vacation person? A person who sits here and says, 2 pina coladas, right? That's vacation. Vacation is where you sit and everything comes to you. Work is when you run after it. Vacation is when you order in room service, right? Rabbi Meir is telling you, I didn't have to try to forget Torah. You don't have to try to lose the spiritual levels you worked really hard for. All you need to do is let down your guard. All you need to do is stop running. I bought a Peloton. Got it half price. Right? Nothing makes Jewish people happier. Nothing. Sorry? I was using it. Amazing. And then, I don't even know what happened. I just stopped using it. You know how long it took me to get back on the bike? Not for any reason. Just because you kind of fell out of that rhythm. You might have this with going to the gym. You go to the gym religiously. I always love that term. Right? People say, I go to the gym religiously. I was like, how often do you go to shul, dude? I was like, oh, you mean you go once a year? Right? How do we use the word religiously to mean daily when it comes to the gym, but not when it comes to actual religion? Sorry, pet peeve. Okay? Sometimes you just fall out and you just say, Al Tomashi, it's going to come to me. One of the greatest things that you need in your spirituality is the ability to know yourself well. And even if a personal trainer, as an example, is not going to tell you anything new, they're not going to teach you any new exercises. The fact that someone came to the office or someone came to the house and now you have to exercise, because what are you going to do? Just ignore the person that came and you should go through your emails. It's just awkward not to exercise. The guy, okay, you just hang out there, I'll be an hour. Oh, that's all the time you have, right? No one's gonna do that. Sometimes you'll pay the money just so that you exercise. Yeah, does that make sense? Sometimes you need to know yourself. And the fact that there's classes going on in the synagogue is not enough for you to go to them. So you have to get a private tutor, a private person that you set up a time that you pay each week. It's good money, it's a good investment. Because you know yourself. Judaism is not going to chase you. In the world in which we live, nothing chases you that is of value. The only things that chase you are stupidity. Instagram chases you. Right? The notifications on your phone, they chase you. What good things chase you? Nothing. You have to make the effort, right? So Rabbi Meir says, my first mistake was thinking that I wanted to live in Vacation Village. Shechaverecha, don't think that your friends are going to do it for you. Sometimes people think, I remember when I was a young man. I hope I don't get fired for this. We have an executive director here. This is a disaster. Okay, moving on to another story. I was always a good person, perfectly suited for this job at all times in my life. No. Sorry? There are cameras everywhere. Don't worry. We're being watched. This is going in a very different direction than you think it's going, so don't worry. So when I was in yeshiva, I was always a good kid. I thought that I was a little bit naughty, but I wasn't naughty at all. You guys remember the naughtiest thing that I did in yeshiva?
Yes.
You went to a Harvard conference.
I ditched Saturday night in yeshiva and I went to an Avram Fried concert.
Oh, that's terrible.
That's the worst thing I would do, okay? I thought I was baller, but I was just a yeshiva guy who went to an Avram Fried concert. I was such a naughty guy singing V'chano Hashem noto yeminecho hayvi yalmei. Okay, that's Mordechai and David, but either way. So I just remember that I had this conversation with my rabbi, and he basically said to me, like, you have to decide where you want to go. Do you want to drift and be nobody, or do you want to apply yourself and actually make something of your time here, of your being in yeshiva? And I just remembered then, like, if I'm out, I'm out. What am I wasting my time being something that's not, you know? So I doubled down. I decided, that's it, I'm moving into the Beit Midrash. But I also realized that I had a certain group of friends, you know, I was friendly with everybody, and they were the kinds that were always, they were busy always with the distractions. Not even necessarily bad distractions, but all distractions are bad. Right? My rabbi used to say this all the time. People think that the problem with social media is like the filth that you find online and social media. That's one problem, and it is a big problem. But there's a much bigger problem that it just literally sucks life out of you. It sucks away your time. Now, could you imagine? I always think about this. I don't know. Is anyone here like a serial abuser of phone time? Because you might want to shut your ears if you want to retain that. Imagine someone came to you and said, "We're looking for a donation." You're like, "How much?" And they're like, "No, it's not for money." You're like, "Oh, for a kidney." And you're like, "No, it's not for a kidney. We want you to donate years of your life." Would you donate a week of your life to somebody? Yeah? A month? A year? I don't know. I'm going to give you a year of my life. You out of your mind? You know how much time you're giving, and not to someone to live, to nothing. To nothing. It's like there's something, you just go into, you plug yourself in, and it just like sucks your blood out of you. And it goes, where does it go? To nowhere. Think about that. That's literally what's happening. Don't think that if you go to a place which doesn't have a robust system. I thought to myself, I had these friends, they were distractions. You know, they were always running out to do whatever and not to do the you know. And I decided I'm going to move into, you know what I thought to do? I thought, how am I going to make them not come to always ask me? Always ask me to go with them here or go with them there, or, you know, ditch thing and go play basketball. I said, I need something, because I'm fresh. I'm new to this decision to go all in on the learning. So I decided that I was going to do something external, something that maybe didn't really matter, but would help me in that interim time. I wound up putting my tzitzit out and getting really big briskapayas. Like the ones behind your ear, but then they're so big they get a little bit bigger. I just saw the look of disgust, Robin. Calm down. And then they got bigger and bigger until eventually they start like peeking out from behind your ears. They're like, hey, right? Okay. And you know what? It worked. Now, if I was to ask you, you know, do you think peyot are really important in the development of a rabbi? I think you would say no. I think I would say no. But I think they made a difference to me. They helped me in that time see myself in a way which in that place meant that you were more serious. And I think that self-knowledge to recognize that something that for someone else is meaningless, but for you really helps, you gotta understand yourself well enough to know that those things are gonna work for you. And don't say, chaverecha, you know what? My good friends will keep me on the straight and narrow. Because what about the other friends that just want you to come with them to whatever other restaurant, or just want you to go to whatever other place, or just want you to come on this other trip that doesn't have prayers at all, you know, over the holidays, or kind of says that it has kosher style meals, Or it's a Passover program, but no one's really checked if the food is actually really kosher for Passover. We'll just eat fish. I'll bring matzah and we'll just eat fish. I've heard these things. And people that normally wouldn't, but friends are going, you can't leave this stuff to anybody else. So on the one hand, we're learning about the importance of being your own biggest cheerleader, about understanding yourself, about putting barriers in, about making sure that you're in the best possible environment for growth. And that incorporates and that needs friends and other people around you to help support you. On the other hand, you can't rely only on them. So there's a sequence. Rabbi Elazar ben Arach is teaching us. You plus them plus place. Ve'al al tisha'en. And with the ability to not rely on your own bina, on your own wisdom. So I want to talk about what this means with you for just 1 second. Rabbi Chaim Pelagi says that the Gemara explains to us that the pasuk that we say, in fact, it's the first pasuk that we teach a child to say. What's the first pasuk that we teach children? Anyone know? Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha kihilat Yaakov. Before you teach them Shema. Now, technically, that sounds crazy. Tell me why. Why is that nuts?
You're telling them that there's a Torah before you're telling them that there's a God.
You're telling them about God's law before you tell them about God.
Torah will bring you.
Yes, but if Torah is not important, because I don't know that anyone important wrote it, so then why do I have to listen to it?
It's like telling them what the parent wants them to do without telling them they're a parent.
So how does that make sense? You know what the answer is? At that stage of the child's development, it doesn't have to make sense. The order does not have to make sense. If your kid is running into the street, you don't need to explain to them, okay, let me explain to you. Repeat after me. Terminal velocity, right? You don't need to tell the kid that a car at this speed, traveling, in this direction, hits an object of this weight, ultimately that's going to result in internal bleeding, which means that you will die. So look both ways before you cross the street. You tell the kid, look both ways before you cross the street, whack! There were great educators that said that that's one of the only things that you slap a child for putting themselves in danger. Why? Because smacking, that's a conditioned response. Now, if you smack them to learn Torah, that's a terrible thing. Because you've conditioned them to learn Torah and you've not made it valuable, you've made it something that they don't like, that they think is terrible by association. But for their own safety, when they don't yet understand, you might want to, if it'll save their lives, you might want to give them a slap at a young age. Now, I'm not arguing the merits or demerits of that strategy here. But what I'm saying is that there's many times where the appropriate road is not actually one which is so logical. You might tell me that it's illogical that a person might need peyot to become a rabbi. And by the way, there was a moment in time when I was in Israel, when I was just looking in my own eyes in the mirror, and I was like, yeah, I don't need these anymore. And I shaved them off. It wasn't some rebellion. It wasn't like I was deciding I need to go to a nightclub tonight, These are going to stick out. These are going to hold me down. Let me shave off my peyot. Wasn't embarrassed of my tzitzit in public. I was in a yeshiva where everyone else was wearing their tzitzit. I just didn't need it anymore. And when I didn't need it anymore, I just reverted to what my actual custom was. Do you hear me? Sometimes the decisions that you make, people ask you, it's not rational. Well, if your religion means enough to you, I'm sure you'll be able to stick by it even if you move to nowhere. If your relationship with Hashem is strong enough, you don't need a minyan. or a synagogue. It's a relationship between you and Hashem. Ve'el binatecha al tisha'en. Sometimes we're looking for something which is so logical, but we're forgetting that oftentimes human beings are not governed by logic. Logically, if I believe in the Torah and I know it's true and I know that there's a world to come and I know there's punishment and reward, logically I should never do sins. If only that was the case. It's just not the case. Sometimes you have to work with yourself. Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, you are the bread. And yes, mice should follow the bread, but they might not want to leave Brooklyn or the Jewish community. They might not come after you. Logically, you're so smart. You're a greater scholar than any one of them. What do you have to learn from them? They should be learning from you. If you have your books, you should be fine. I should be, but I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be. And I always loved it that the pasuk that he read incorrectly, ostensibly, if he couldn't read anymore, right? He should have been, any pasuk would have been a pasuk that he would have read incorrectly. But Hashem made him understand that even the wisest person, wisdom in the Torah, where does wisdom live? Chochmat lev, the pasuk says. Wisdom lives in the heart. The pasuk that he misread was a direct message from Hashem. Hashem said to him, you're relying on your wisdom of your heart. But what if your heart is deaf? What if it can't hear? What if you're in a place where the waves are too loud for you to hear the messages of the Torah, for you to hear the call of the synagogue? People ask me all the time about moving to Manhattan. And I'm very frank with them, by the way. I don't know if it's a good move. Maybe it's a terrible move for you to move from the city, from there to the city. Maybe it's a wonderful move. For the type of person, by the way, that is a very social person, it might be the wrong thing. It's much easier to be socially Jewish. Much easier. In a place where there's lots of shuls and lots of Jewish stuff, it's much easier. Where everyone sees you and knows where you are, much easier. So for someone like that, moving to the city might mean that there's a precipitous drop in their Jewish engagement. But there's also some people who can't stand the fact that they're in this high pressure Jewishy bubble. And for them, the freedom that the city offers actually is beneficial. And they wind up doing things that they never did in places where the natural environment was much more religious, because they feel less pressured to do so. There are all different kinds of yeshivas. Ones where they force you to do the right thing, and ones where they don't force you to do anything. Which is better? Depends on the kid. And that's all of us. What's better? Depends on the kid. But sometimes you might want to ask someone else other than just yourself, which is the best place for you, which is the best decision for you. Because you know why? A lot of times when we think we're making logical decisions, we're making lazy decisions. No, I know myself, Rabbi. I know myself. Like if I have less pressure, I'll do better. Or you just want less pressure. I think that's what this Mishnah is teaching us. But I think that the Mishnah actually gives us a real dose of optimism. Because it tells you that even if someone falls so far where they can't remember anything, where they have zero connection whatsoever, I hear this all the time, Rabbi, I feel like I'm out of it. Can you read still? Like, you're still in the game then. And even if you've fallen so far, you can rise once again like a phoenix to be called Rabbi Nehorai, the person who once again brings incredible illumination to the eyes of all of the other scholars. It just takes this understanding of yourself, your friends, and your environment. Those three things pack a potent punch in allowing a person to push for their premium potential, and lots of other words that start with P. All right, thank you so much for coming.